Hello. So yesterday we saw David let God down miserably. And let me explain. David went onto his roof one night and he saw a beautiful woman out taking a bath. And he decided that he was going to go and get this beautiful woman, and he wanted to find out who she was, and he wanted her to come and meet him. So he calls for servants and he inquires, and one of them says, well, her name's Bathsheba. She is married to Uriah the Hittite, and Uriah happens to be one of his soldiers. And Joab's aren't, and she comes and visits, and he's unfaithful with her. And after he's unfaithful with her, she goes home, and Uriah's none the wiser because he's at war. After a time, she sends a message to David letting him know she's with child. And David sends to Joab and says, send Uriah to me. And he tries to get Uriah to go home to be with his wife a couple of different ways. The first time he just gives him a vacation. And Uriah is too faithful to David and the cause to go home. He slept outside the castle. And so David calls him in and says, why aren't you going home? And he says, why should I have pleasure while my colleagues and my captain are out there in tents in the field struggling? So David says, all right, I'll send you tomorrow. So he invites him to dinner that night, and he gets him drunk with a lot of wine. And Uriah still doesn't go home. He stays out there in the court with the servants still. So the next morning, David gets up and he writes a letter and he gives it to Uriah and he sends it to Boaz through Uriah. This is so dirty because he knows Uriah is faithful enough to carry that letter and not break the seal. And he's carrying a letter about his own fate. Because this letter tells Joab to put Uriah in the line of fire and back away and leave him alone. But that's not exactly how it works out. They go up too close to the wall and Uriah gets smited with an arrow. And what's really messed up about this is that Joab was trying to protect the servant, telling him, just tell him it was a mistake, tell him we know we shouldn't get too close, but this is a really big war, and all David has to say is, let not this thing displease thee, for the sword devoureth one as well as another. And he says, just make the battle more strong against the city and overthrow it and encourage thou him. So he just kind of dismisses it and says, just do a little better next time. And Bathsheba, she mourns for her husband, and after the mourning time was past, David fetched her to his house and took her to become his wife. And she bared the baby, and what David had done really displeased God. So David doesn't quite think it out. He doesn't think much of it because it's just a woman, right? Well, like I said, God's trying to establish that women are not just things, and that actually this was kind of wrong because Uriah only had the one wife, and he loved her, but he was more loyal to his king than to his own wife. And that cost him dearly because his king did not appreciate the loyalty and did not return it. And to God, that stank. So he sends this prophet, Nathaniel, and Nathaniel comes in and he goes, look, there's this man. He doesn't even tell him what he's there for. He just starts the story. He says, there's this man. He has this one little lamb and he's poor. And they treat this lamb like family. And one day the rich man comes because he doesn't want to slay one of his flocks. So he'll just give money to take from a poor man because they'll need the money, right? So they take his lamb and they use it for their festival. But they love that lamb like a member of the family. And after Nathan tells him this story, David is angry and he says, that's wrong. They will restore that lamb 4 times. He should face the capital punishment for that. That's where Nathan kind of stuck David at, because he said, don't you realize that you're the man that took the lamb? Said, God told me to tell you, he set you over the house of Israel, and he gave you everything that was Saul's, even his wives, his house, his power, and anything else that you would have desired. All you had to do was ask, and I would have given it to you. If this, what I have already done, has not been enough, I've turned away every enemy you had, and what you did despised me, because you smited an innocent man and took his wife. And when we think back to like Abraham's story and Jacob's story, well, it might have been Isaac's wife, they all faced traveling and having people take their wives, and God plaguing their entire countries. Pharaoh returned her with a handmaiden and a bunch of money and a bunch of livestock, and the same with Abimelech. He returned with a bunch of money and a bunch of livestock and said, why did you lie to us and tell us that she was your sister? Well, because I was afraid I was going to get smited. Well, still, instead of react negatively, though, they both were apologetic and gave him money to recompense the fact that they took his wife, because they went through these plagues. So of course God's not going to be happy that David goes and does the very thing that he's trying to get them all to get away from. One of the things, because polygamy, he wasn't happy about the whole multiple wife thing. I think he really valued the one-on-one connection, and women were being treated worse and worse as time went by, because it's the belief that it's women's fault that man fell, which is true. Eve sinned. But forgiveness is a part of God's plan. And man's plan doesn't seem to have forgiveness to it. So we see that there's going to be judgment cast about the fact that David and Bathsheba have a baby in the time that Uriah didn't even come home, and everybody knew he didn't, because he openly slept in the court in front of everybody. And his wife probably said, I haven't been seeing Uriah for a while. And there's Jewish laws at this point that they come out that if you are unfaithful, you are supposed to be stoned, you and the person that were unfaithful together. And this is God's anointed king. This child is nothing but a witness to the fact that David did not listen to what God told him to do. And God does not like that. So he tells him through Nathan, he says, this child isn't going to make it, because it's an abomination the way that it came about. And I'm not settled with this story very well, except for the fact that we know that babies go to God. So we know that this infant immediately went to God and is in heaven. And I've comforted myself with the fact that my babies that I've had didn't have to be born on earth when they were miscarried, that they are in heaven, and one day I will get to see my babies in heaven, and they didn't have to walk this. I have one son who did walk this, and every day I thank God for him, because without him, I don't know where I'd be. But I have two children that I look forward to meeting in heaven. And David lost one because God took him home. There's not even a name given. He just took him. He got sick, and David fasted while he was sick and then got up and ate, and the servants took that wrong. And he said, I was praying for him while he was sick, but there was nothing I could do to supplicate for him. Now that he's gone, there's nothing I can do to bring him back. I need to eat. And that was pretty much how it went. Well, then after they mourned and they prayed for the baby and moved on, Bathsheba conceived again, and they had another son. And they called him Solomon. And it says, and David comforted Bathsheba his wife, and went on to her, and lay with her. And she bare a son, and he called his name Solomon. And the Lord loved him. And he sent by the hand of Nathan the prophet. And he called his name Jedediah, because of the Lord. So Solomon has got apparently two names now, Solomon and Jedediah. Well, David defeats the Ammonites and plunders their cities and takes their crowns. Well, Joab says, you need to come finish this off, because if I take it, I'm going to take on her. So David went and took on her, and they went back to Jerusalem after they did it. And that's where we left off. We're now in chapter 13. And it came to pass after this that Absalom, the son of David, had a fair sister whose name was Tamar. And Ammon, the son of David, loved her. And Ammon was so vexed that he fell sick for his sister Tamar, for she was a virgin, and Ammon thought it was hard for him to do anything to her. But Ammon had a friend whose name was Jonadab, the son of Shimea, David's brother. And Jonadab was a very subtle man. And he said unto him, Why art thou, being the king's son, lean from day to day? Wilt thou not tell me? And Ammon said unto him, I love Tamar, my brother Absalom's sister. And Jonadab said unto him, Lay thee down on thy bed, and make thyself sick. And when thy father cometh to see thee, say unto him, I pray thee, let my sister Tamar come, and give me meat, and dress the meat in my sight, that I may see it, and eat it at her hand. So Ammon lay down, and made himself sick. And when the king was come to see him, Ammon said unto the king, I pray thee, let Tamar my sister come in, and make me a couple of cakes in my sight, that I may eat at her hand. And then David sent home to Tamar, saying, Go now to thy brother. So Tamar went to her brother Ammon's house, and he was laid down, and she took flour and kneaded it, and made cakes in his sight, and did bake the cakes. And she took a pan and poured them out before him, but he refused to eat. And Ammon said, Have out all men from me. And they all went out, every man from him. And Ammon said unto Tamar, Bring the meat into the chamber, that I may eat of thine hand. And Tamar took the cakes which she had made, and brought them into the chamber to Ammon her brother. And when she had brought them unto him to eat, he took hold of her, and he said unto her, Come lie with me, my sister. And she answered him, Nay, my brother, do not force me. For no such thing ought to be done in Israel. Do not thou this folly. And I, whither shall I cause my shame to go? And as for thee, thou shalt be as one of the fools in Israel. Now therefore, I pray thee, speak unto the king, for he will not withhold me from thee. Howbeit he would not hearken unto her voice, but being stronger than she, forced her and lay with her. And Ammon hated her exceedingly, so that the hatred wherewith he hated her was greater than the love wherewith he had loved her. And Ammon said unto her, Arise, be gone. And she said unto him, There is no cause. This evil in sending me away is greater than the other that thou didst unto me. But he would not hearken unto her. And he called his servant that ministered unto him, and said, Put now this woman out from me, and bolt the door after her. And she had a garment of diverse colors upon her, for with such robes were the king's daughters that were virgins apparelled. Then his servant brought her out, and bolted the door after her. And Tamar put ashes on her head, and rent her garment of diverse colors that was on her, and laid her hand on her head, and went on crying. And Absalom her brother said unto her, Hath Ammon thy brother been with thee? But hold now thy peace, my sister, he is thy brother. Regard not this thing. So Tamar remained desolate in her brother Absalom's house. But when the king David heard of all these things, he was very wroth. And Absalom spake unto his brother Ammon, neither good nor bad, for Absalom hated Ammon, because he had forced his sister Tamar. And it came to pass after 2 full years, that Absalom had sheep shearers in Baal-hazor, which is beside Ephraim. And Absalom invited all the king's sons. And Absalom came to the king and said, Behold now, thy servant hath sheep shearers. Let the king, I beseech thee, and his servants go with thy servant. And the king said to Absalom, Nay, my son, let us not all now go, lest we be chargeable unto thee. And he pressed him. Howbeit he would not go, but blessed him. Then said Absalom, If not, I pray thee, let my brother Ammon go with us. And the king said unto him, Why should he go with thee? But Absalom pressed him, that he let Ammon and all the king's sons go with him. Now Absalom had commanded his servants, saying, Mark ye now when Ammon's heart is merry with wine. And when I say unto you, Smite Ammon, then put him to sleep. Fear not, have not I commanded you? Or be courageous and be valiant. And the servants of Absalom did unto Ammon as Absalom had commanded. Then all the king's sons arose, and every man gat him up upon his mule and fled. And it came to pass, when they were in the way, that tidings came to David, saying that Absalom had slain all the king's sons, and there is not one of them left. Then the king arose and tare his garments, and lay on the earth, and all the servants stood by with their clothes rent. And Jonadab, the son of Shimea, David's brother, answered and said, let not my lord suppose that they have slain all the young men, the king's sons, for Ammon only is passed away. For by the appointment of Absalom, this has been determined from the day that he forced his sister Tamar. Now therefore, let not my lord the king take the thing to his heart, to think that all the king's sons are passed away, for Ammon only is passed away. But Absalom fled, and the young man that kept the watch lifted his eyes and looked and beheld, there came much people by the way of the hillside behind him. And Jonadab said unto the king, Behold, the king's son come as thy servant said, so it is. And it came to pass, as soon as he had made an end of speaking, that behold, the king's sons came and lifted up their voices and wept. And the king also and all his servants wept very sore. But Absalom fled and went to Talmai, son of Ammihud, king of Geshur. And David mourned for his son every day. So Absalom fled and went to Geshur, and was there 3 years. And the soul of King David longed to go forth unto Absalom, for he was comforted concerning Ammon, seeing he was passed away. Now Joab, the son of Jeruiah, perceived that the king's heart was toward Absalom. And Joab sent to Tekoa, and fetched thence a wise woman, and said unto her, I pray thee, feign thyself to be a mourner, and put on now mourning apparel, and appoint not thyself with oil, but be as a woman that had a long time mourned for the passed away, and come to the king, and speak on this manner unto him. So Joab put the words into her mouth. And when the woman of Tekoa spake to the king, she fell on her face to the ground, and did obeisance, and said, Help, O king. And the king said unto her, What aileth thee? And she answered, I am indeed a widow woman, and mine husband is passed away. And thy handmaiden had 2 sons, and they strove together in the field, and there was none to part them. But the one smote the other, and slew him. And behold, the whole family is risen against thine handmaiden. And they said, Deliver him that smote his brother, that we may smite him for the life of his brother whom he slew. And we will destroy the heir also. And so they shall quench my coal which is left, and shall not leave to my husband neither name nor remainder upon the earth. And the king said unto the woman, Go to thine house, and I will give charge concerning thee. And the woman of Tekoa said unto the king, My lord, O king, the iniquity be on me, and on my father's house, and the king and his throne be guiltless. And the king said, Whosoever saith aught unto thee, bring him to me, and he shall not touch thee any more. Then said she, I pray thee, let the king remember the Lord thy God, that thou wouldest not suffer the revengers of life force to destroy any more, lest they destroy my son. And as the Lord liveth, there shall not one hair of thy son fall to the earth. Then the woman said, Let thine handmaid, I pray thee, speak one word unto my lord, the king. And he said, Say on. And the woman said, Wherefore then hast thou thought such a thing against the people of God? For the king doth speak this thing as one which is faulty, and that the king doth not fetch home against his banished. For we must needs pass away, and are as waters spilt on the ground, which cannot be gathered up again. Neither doth God respect any person, yet doth he devise means that his banished be not expelled from him. Now therefore that I am come to speak of this thing unto my lord the king, it is because the people have made me afraid. And thy handmaid said, I will now speak unto the king. It may be that the king will perform the request of his handmaid. For the king will hear to deliver his handmaid out of the hand of the man that would destroy me and my son together out of the inheritance of God. Then thine handmaid said, The word of my lord the king shall now be comfortable. For as an angel of God, so is my lord the king, to discern good and bad. Therefore the king thy God will be with thee. Then the king answered and said unto the woman, Hide not from me, I pray thee, the thing that I shall ask thee. And the woman said, Let my lord the king now speak. And the king said, Is not the hand of Joab with thee in all this? And the woman answered and said, As thy soul liveth, my lord the king, none can turn to the right hand or to the left from aught that my lord the king hath spoken. For thy servant Joab, he bade me, and he put all these words in the mouth of thine handmaid, to fetch about this form of speech. Hath thy servant Joab done this thing? And my Lord is wise according to the wisdom of an angel of God to know all things that are in the earth. And the king said unto Joab, Behold now, I have done this thing. Go therefore, bring the young man Absalom again. And Joab fell to the ground on his face and bowed himself and thanked the king. And Joab said, Today thy servant knoweth I have found grace in thy sight, my lord, O king, and that the king hath fulfilled the request of his servant. So Joab arose and went to Geshur and brought Absalom to Jerusalem. And the king said, Let him turn to his own house, and let him not see my face. So Absalom returned to his own house and saw not the king's face. But in all Israel there was none to be so much praised as Absalom for his beauty. From the sole of his foot even to the crown of his head, there was no blemish in him. And when he pulled his head, for it was at every year's end that he pulled it, because the hair was hefty on him, therefore he pulled it, he weighed the hair of his head at 200 shekels after the king's weight. And unto Absalom there were born 3 sons and 1 daughter, whose name was Tamar. She was a woman of a fair countenance. So Absalom dwelt 2 full years in Jerusalem, and saw not the king's face. Therefore Absalom sent for Joab to have sent him to the king, but he would not come to him. And when he sent again the second time, he would not come. Therefore he said unto his servants, See, Joab's field is near mine, and he hath barley there. Go set it on fire. And Absalom's servants set the field on fire. Then Joab arose and came to Absalom unto his house, and said unto him, Wherefore have thy servants set my field on fire? And Absalom answered Joab, Behold, I sent unto thee, saying, Come hither, that I may see thee to the king, to say, Wherefore am I come from Geshur? It had been good for me to have been there still. Now therefore let me see the king's face. If there be any iniquity in me, let him smite me. So Joab came to the king and told him, and when he called for Absalom, he came to the king and bowed himself on his face to the ground before the king, and the king kissed Absalom. So the iniquity and the promise that he would put more curses on David's house definitely came true there, because his son did something unspeakable, and his other son sinned even more out of anger because of the unspeakable. None of them stopped and stepped away, and there's a broken girl. And a broken king and a broken nation, really, because all this stuff is known. And that's where we're going to leave off for today. Thank you, God bless you, and have a great day. Just want to take a minute to give a shout out to a site called Free Bible Images, and this is where I go to get a lot of my images that I share. This is one reason, another reason why I will never be monetized, because this is not meant for commercial use. It is a sin to collect money to spread the word of God anyway. But these images are available for those of you out there who have Sunday school classes for download. It's at freebibleimages.org. And I have a few things here I'm putting up on the screen while I'm speaking with you for you to check out. This is a great resource. And the pictures, I can always find something to go along with the story that I'm telling. And it's pretty sound with what the Bible says. There's many different artists that are featured in there. Their names, they all have license agreements to download. I do have copies of those when I download the pictures to use to make the videos with. So check it out. It's very much a great resource if you are somebody who is teaching the word to other people. And God bless you.